Hello and welcome back to Backchat, the podcast where I take you backstage for a chat every week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube. Before I kick off episode 2, I want to give a huge thanks to anyone who supported the Instagram, listened to the podcast and shared it with their friends. I'm very excited about the lineup of guests I have for you guys over the forthcoming weeks, and this week's guest is no different. I wasn't lying when I said I had a great guest this week. He has starred on Broadway in Riverdance and Movin, which he was hand-picked for by Billy Joel himself. With a successful solo career, he sold over 30,000 copies of his album Roadworks in Japan and 20,000 copies in the US. Now he resides in one of Ireland's most loved bands, the High Kings. Their first 3 studio albums reached 3 or higher in Billboard's world charts, 2 of which went platinum in Ireland. So it's fair to say this week's guest knows the entertainment business well, and he's here to tell us all about it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Darren Holden. Darren, how are we?
I'm very good, Michael. How are you?
I'm great. And listen, thank you so much for doing this, Darren.
It's my pleasure, and thanks for such a lovely introduction.
No problem at all. I just want to start by commending you and the lads on the streets of London. It's by far the best version I've ever heard of the song.
Wow, thank you very much indeed. We're very happy with it, and it's a song, as you know. The original was such a beautiful rendition by the writer Ralph McTell. So anybody who goes and tries to do a version of a song like that, you really need to kind of, have your wits about you and know what you're doing. But I think Brian Dunphy did a really, really good job on the vocal, and he came along with the arrangement, and just the sentiment was there, and we kind of all got that really nice feeling that, this is definitely going to be a contender for the record. So, and it's getting a lovely reaction so far, which is really, really great. So thanks for that.
Yeah, of course. And it is a video that comes from a project you guys are working on and have coming out soon. And I love the concept behind the project. Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, well, I can tell you that the album is going to be called High Kings World Tour Live from Dublin, because obviously with everything that's been going on with lockdowns and restrictions, the entertainment industry has stopped since March, and we were due to be all over the world this year and traveling everywhere and putting on concerts. So, at the end of the day, we had to get together, have a couple of Zoom meetings and sit down and work something out. So our manager, Brian, came up with a great plan to do something like, a High Kings World Tour, but live from Dublin, and a bunch of different songs that, from around places around the world that we've been to, some we haven't been to, and shoot some videos as well to go with it. So we love the idea, we love the concept, and the vibe is good. And like we just said, The Streets of London is the first song to drop from that. We'll have a few more coming in the next few months, and the album will be out on February 14th in 2021, all going well.
Well, February 14th, then we can look out for the album.
Yeah.
And, I really love the idea of, doing an album, full of songs from different cities in the world, and being able to say, the world tour was shot in Dublin. That's a really clever idea. And I've seen a few adaptations by musicians, to deal with the lockdown thing, and I think that's a really clever idea. I'm really looking forward to hearing that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, hopefully it'll be well received. I think it will be. So fingers crossed.
Taking it kind of a few years back before the High Kings, and kind of in your solo career, as well as your involvement with Rhythm of Dance and Riverdance, tell me about what it was like in kind of 99 and 1000 touring at Rhythm of Dance, then pretty much jumping into Riverdance after that. Like, that was a mental time for you.
It was crazy. And the funny thing was, around 1997, I had been doing a sort of a pop thing in Ireland and Europe and the UK. It was managed by Louis Walsh. So I was on Smash Hits tours and touring with Boyzone for about 2 years, Backstreet Boys. And I sort of got lost in the midst of all of that. I was sort of jumping between different genres, from country to pop to dance music. So I needed to take some time out. So I stopped touring and working in 97 for a minute in order to kind of regroup and figure out what I wanted to do. And then in 99, one of my mentors and managers, Shay Hennessy, who I was signed to his record label, Crashed Records, he rang me and said, look, I need you to be the lead vocalist in a show that's going to be touring Europe for a year called Rhythm of the Dance. I knew nothing about this at all. It was basically one of the first concept shows after Riverdance and Lord of the Dance that was going to capitalize on the success of those shows. So I kind of thought, like, why not? Let's give this a shot. Let's give it a go. And as I said, I was brought in to sing 6 really sort of big, well-known Irish songs and a few original songs that were written very specially for the show. And about 6 months into that run, John McColgan came to see me in Denmark John being, the producer of Riverdance, and asked me if I would be interested in coming to do an audition in Dublin for their Broadway production, which they were opening in 2000. So obviously I kind of thought, wow, that's an offer I can't turn down. So they flew me from Denmark to Dublin, did the audition, and I was back in time to do the next show the following day. And John rang me and said, look, we'd like you to be a part of the team. We'd like you to come to New York. So it was just an incredible, crazy thing. And of course I said yes immediately. So joined Riverdance in January 2000, moved to New York in February, and we were on Broadway in March of that year. And we lasted 18 months, which was a really good run for a Broadway production. So it was a sensational time. I just dove headlong into New York. I had been to New York before, and it was, when you're a bit younger, it's a little bit of a scary place to be when you're a musician, because it's sink or swim, So I just decided to swim. And I did many auditions when I was there, even though I was working on Broadway. I auditioned for other shows. I did jingles. I did everything you could imagine. I turned up for, and on the QT, that is.
Yeah.
But it was good because, it gave me a lot of confidence. It gave me a kind of a devil-may-care attitude, which you do need to have when you're living in New York, because it's a really tough business there.
Yeah.
But, it was a great learning process for me, and just to perform, to sing lead vocals. I was the understudy to Brian Kennedy for the first 6 months, and then I took over the lead vocalist. So that was incredible, just an incredible feeling to get out on that stage and do that every night. So yeah, it was magic, really magic.
And do you still have that? Do you have a love for New York from spending so much time there?
It will never, never, never leave me. New York is it's weird. I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels it, but like I grew up in a little village in Kilkenny called Mooncoin,
Yeah.
100 million gazillion miles from somewhere like Manhattan in New York. But the minute I got off the plane in New York, I felt at home immediately. I don't know what it is. I still pine for it these days. I talk to people that I know there, musicians that I worked with, and the heart yearns for there, So I think somewhere down the line along the way, I will end up going back there for a while, or having a part-time home there at some point. It's a great, great city. If you like music and you like the entertainment industry, there's no better place to be than New York City.
Yeah, and I think it's so funny you said that you felt at home there, because a lot of people, when you say New York, it's like you get there and you get in and you get out and you just run with everyone. No one looks back. So it's really interesting to hear that you have you feel like you're at home there. And I think you're not the first Irish person I've heard say that there's a kind of a bit of home feeling in New York, which is wild because it's so, as you said, a million miles from how we live here.
Yeah. It definitely defines you. I would have been probably quite enough in the industry here before I went over there. I kind of knew what I was good at, and, what I didn't want to get stuck into. Different things came up and I was like, no, I won't be able to do that. Whereas New York completely redefined me within about 3 months, and I dove headlong into everything. No matter what it was, I was on the Village Voice every Tuesday evening, picked it up. That was, or the Stage magazine, Backstage magazine over there. Any auditions, I would circle them up, and I would be up at 8 o'clock every morning, even though I had a show that night at 8 o'clock, and I would do the rounds in New York all day long. And it became second nature to me, to the point where I didn't even think about it, And I got loads of extra jobs and worked outside of Riverdance while I was there. But I do know people who came over there and didn't like it at all. Just didn't like the rat race vibe of it, and, did a couple of auditions, got crushed in auditions, and went back home again. So it can do that to you. But I think the main thing is to kind of develop a thick skin if you don't have one when you get to New York.
Yeah, as you said, kind of the sink or swim attitude, and you chose to swim, which I love.
Yeah.
And staying on New York, this one was really, really interesting when I started doing my research into kind of your career, which is immense, and I'm so excited to be talking about it.
Thank you.
You were handpicked by Billy Joel, or as we say in Ireland, Billy Joel.
Yeah.
For the musical Movin' Out. How did that come about? What was that phone call like?
Well, that came about. My agent, while I was in Riverdance, Merle Frymark, Merle rang me. I was coming to the end of my run in Riverdance, and I had been in Riverdance on Broadway for 1.5 years, then went on tour for another 18 months all over the United States. And I used to keep in contact with Merle and keep doing, online auditions and stuff like that, or she'd tell me when to pop in and out of Manhattan to do stuff. But this one job came up towards the end of my run with Riverdance. And as I grew up a huge fan of Billy Joel, learning all his music on piano, I said, look, can you hook me up with an audition for that? And I remember her saying to me that she called the producers and they said, look, we're going to wrap up auditions. We haven't found anybody. We've auditioned 375 people from all over the States. And so we're going to wrap it up. And she said, look, can you just see this one person? And I went in on a Wednesday afternoon to Manhattan. And the producers of the show were there. Jimmy Niederlander, Twyla Tharp, who was the choreographer, she was there. All of Billy Joel's band was there. Everybody involved, PR, was kind of in tiered seating in SIR Studios in New York. And I did about 8 songs, Just the Way You Are, Only the Good Die Young, Moving Out, My Life, all of those big hits. And I felt it went really, really well. You know, I didn't do all of the songs completely. But towards the end of the audition then, I copped that Billy was there, incognito, with a baseball cap, like you're wearing yourself.
Oh,
and
okay.
I just thought, my God, thank God I didn't realize he was there at the start of the audition. I would have totally freaked out. So I thanked everybody, and Billy called me back when I was leaving, and he said, look, if you want this job, it's yours. That's the best audition we've heard. And I just thought it was just incredible. You know, I couldn't believe it. It was a real pinch me moment. And I said, are you kidding? And he goes, no, absolutely not. And he said, what are your plans? And I said, well, I was going to go home. I'm finished in Riverdance. And he said, look, can you come back? He said, go home, but come back after 2 weeks and we'll start working together. Which is exactly what happened. So I was on cloud 9 going back to Ireland. And immediately Billy was sending me emails about what to do, what not to do, how to do the songs, and sending me sheet music. And it was mad. It was just crazy, crazy time. And he mentored me for that role for about 6 weeks after I returned to New York. Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, it was just mental.
And what's it like to work with him? Is he a real perfectionist?
He is. He is in funny ways. He gave me leeway. The one thing he said to me at the start was, he said, right, okay, I'm Billy Joel, he said, and you're you. So the last thing I want you to do is to do an impersonation of me, or, you know, get on stage thinking you have to be me. He said, be yourself. I've heard you do it. It's fine. So I think it was after 2 weeks, they put me on a matinee in the New York show, which was mind-blowing. And nerve-wracking at the same time, because I didn't feel I was ready. But I had been working with Billy and then locking myself into a studio in New York every day for 6 hours and just going over the show maybe 8 or 9 times a day, you know, till I knew it backwards. And then I would go and watch the show as it was happening in New York with the other piano man every night. So I went in and did my first show, my second show. And at the second show, Billy was sitting in the front row in the middle. And which again was very nerve-wracking, because he had jumped up on stage before the curtain went up to say hi to me, and he never called me Darren. He always called me Seamus. So he sort of, sort of the Irish thing and the brogue and all that kind of stuff. But he came back to me afterwards and he said, look, I love what you did there. But he said, the only thing is, I don't want you to sound like me, but I do want you to sing in a Long Island accent. So that's the only thing to look out for. So the following day at my apartment in Manhattan, I received a package from him, and it was The Sopranos first season on box set. And he said, apply with a note basically saying, watch this, listen to Tony, and apply some of that to the music. And I just thought it was a genius way of saying what to do without, you know, going into too much detail. So that's exactly what I did. He came back to see me a few more times after that, and he was perfectly happy.
And after that run then, what was it like ending out that run? Because that went for 18 months as well.
That went on Broadway. I was on Broadway for 8 months with that. And then I took the show. The national tour started in Detroit in January 2004. So I was out with that for 3.5 years. I was the lead vocalist for 3.5 years, basically, which meant that I did all of the opening nights in all the major cities like Chicago, LA, Boston, San Francisco, which was really great because the run-up, the press and the PR and the media campaign would be in overdrive. So I would have to go into all these cities in advance. And Jimmy Niederlander, who was the head of the show, would have me singing at baseball games, singing the national anthem, and American football games and basketball games. So I got to do all of this great stuff that, you know, somebody from Ireland wouldn't necessarily get to do. So I relished all of this, and I kind of loved the idea that this was happening for me and to me. And I always remember singing for the Boston Celtics against the Detroit Pistons one time in Boston, and actually no, it was against the Lakers actually, and Shaquille O'Neal was practicing right beside me, and the ball came over while I was waiting to sing the anthem, and it hit me on my shin, and I turned around to hand the ball back to him, and my mouth just opened, because he's like about 9 feet tall. I was like, Jesus, who would believe this is happening? But it was really, really great. Yeah. So, and Billy used to come out to all the opening nights as well and jump on stage with me. So we would always duet on a couple of songs that weren't part of the show, which again was just really, really magical. I mean, even when I talk about it now, all these years later, you still kind of get the shivers. So it was a really amazing time.
That, like, when I hear you just like saying that you were duetting with Billy Joel, it's mind blowing. And even going back to the football games as well, I watched some of the clips on YouTube from you doing the national anthem at those football games. Some of those stadiums are huge. What does it feel like to walk out and be like looking at all these people?
Nerve-wracking. I remember doing Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles when I was there with the show. We were there with the show for about 7 weeks. And I remember doing Dodger Stadium, and it was like 90,000 people. And it was just, I mean, always you would have to think, all right, I'm Irish, I'm not American, and I'm singing their anthem. So please, God, let me not forget a word. Let me not do anything wrong. And I used to practice the hell out of it before I'd go out. I'd be in a dressing room and I'd be singing over and over and over, driving everybody mad. But it was worth it, because when you get out there, it was sort of a really nice feeling. And, I used to always wish that my mom and dad were able to be over there all the time to see what was going on, because they were the ones who push me into music, and, were always very proud of the whole fact that I was doing music. So thank God there was video footage and YouTube footage for them to see, even though they weren't there and physically in person. It was really nice, but it was always a lovely feeling. And the crowd were always lovely and warm to me as well, which was great.
Yeah, that like those video clips are so special for you to have now. And you just touched on being able to show them to your parents. Did you come from a musical family?
Not immediate music family, my great grandfather, Jem Byrne. His name was James Byrne, but his nickname was Jem. He would have been a famous, within Irish music circles, a famous uilleann piper back in the day. He died in 1931. He was from Wicklow. But what he used to do was, he was sort of a wandering minstrel. He used to, set off on foot to all over the length and breadth of Ireland. And he would go into various towns and villages and sit down and start playing his pipes. And obviously he would draw a bit of attention to himself, and the locals would come around and ask him about the music. And then he would teach anybody who wanted to learn uilleann pipes, and teach kids who wanted to learn music and talk about music. And he became well known all over, particularly on the East Coast, in Wexford and Wicklow and Kildare. And he did lots of, feshkiols and everything, and won lots of prizes. And he actually died in 1931 in Aughrim, after a session in Aughrim, in Kelly's pub there. And he was buried on an unmarked grave until 1975, when Ceoltas Ceoltóirí na hÉireann gave him a proper burial, a proper headstone, and sent word to his family. Like, my dad would have been his grandson, and sent word to the family in Kilkenny that they had done this. And funnily enough, our management office recently received a photograph that was sent to me from a lady in Aughrim, who found a picture of the unveiling of that grave in 1975, and she had it framed and sent to me with everybody that was there on the day. And I still can't believe it. I'm going to, display it here in my house at some point. Really, but I still have to actually call this lady and thank her for that, because I thought it was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. It's like a black and white picture, but she has it all
colored, and
it's
to be today.
Yeah, the definition has been done on it, and it's just amazing.
That's a really amazing thing, and it came full circle for you in that sense. Like your great grandfather, playing Irish music, and then things come full circle with your career, bringing you back to Ireland and back to a group like the High Kings. To play Irish music, and obviously that'll run in your blood. How did the High Kings come about?
Well, the High Kings came about 2007, actually. I had finished up with Moving Out, and I'd been touring nonstop for like 9 years at that point. And I was married at that point. I had a little baby, Josh. He was the first of my three kids that were born. And I moved to Florida, believe it or not. I moved to a place called Davenport, just outside Orlando. We had a place there, just to kind of take a bit of a break. And I was still working with doing corporate events with Billy Joel. Every now and again, he would get events to do in Washington or New York or LA. And some of the ones that he didn't do, I would do in his place. So I represented him with his band around the United States and wherever. So that's what I was doing. I was based in Orlando doing that. And one day, out of the blue, I got a call from Brian Dunphy from the High Kings. Brian and I had worked together in Riverdance on Broadway. He said to me, what's the story? What are you up to? And I said, I'm just chilling out. I've been touring for ages and I've just taken some time out and, hanging out with Josh and Michelle here. And he said, Lorraine, I've just heard your name being bounced around for a new band that's going to be formed here in Ireland. So I was like, okay, tell me more. Told me the concept. He said, look, you're going to get a call from the manager. His name is Dave Kavanagh. And of course, I knew Dave Kavanagh from managing Clannad and Cry Before Dawn years before and being involved with U2. So I was like, fair enough, great. And I got a call from Dave and he sold the concept of it to me very well. He was looking for a ballad group, to put a ballad group together with 4 good vocalists, people who knew the genre, people who knew the ballads and the folk scene. And asked me if he could fly me home to do a meeting and a bit of an audition. So I said, yeah, of course. So turned out, never did the audition, just flew home, met Dave, met Shay Healy, who was part of the gang at the time, and the label were EMI Records in Manhattan. So I met the head of EMI, Ian Ralphini, at the time, and got the job on the spot. So it was myself and Brian were the first 2 in, and after that it was Finbar Clancy and Martin Fury, who was one of the original members who's no longer with us. And we just started singing together on the first day we got into the studio, and we knew immediately that it was right. A thing, we got that vibe, and the harmonies were there, the natural draw to the music was there, and so we kind of felt, straight off, this is going to work. Yeah, it felt right.
And when was the moment where you realized that the High Kings were something special? Because it did feel right initially by the sounds of it, but was there a gig or was there a performance where you were like, this is something special, this was meant to be, I was meant to be back home in Ireland for this?
Yeah, well, we did the first album. The recording of the first album was great. We had a producer, David Downs, who had worked with Celtic Woman, and he did an incredible job on the album. But we filmed a live show in Ardmore Studios in Bray in County Wicklow. We had an invited audience in. We had press from all around the world. We had our families, and anybody who wanted tickets could come in. We used a full band. Ned O'Hanlon, who had directed a lot of the U2 live videos, came in to direct. So it was a big undertaking from the off. But I think we were on stage during the second night of filming, and we just got the shivers. We had a 40-piece pipe band come in during the filming of The Parting Glass, which was the finale of the show. Yeah. And that was the moment for me personally where the hair stood on the back of my neck, and I actually had my mom and dad and my family in the audience. I caught their eye, and it was an instant kind of connection and reaction going, yeah, this is the one. This is it's very, very special. Yeah. Even now I look at that on YouTube, that particular song and that particular performance, and you still get the shivers from it. So yeah, I think it was that it kind of convinced me that it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, and even I did see some footage of that gig on YouTube, and probably my favorite song on that track list was Irish Pub Song. That song kind of really gets me going. I saw you guys in, I think it was December of last year, in Belfast, and whenever I hear that song, I get that kind of feeling of the Irish pride. I don't even know how to describe it.
Yeah, you want to see the audiences in the States when we do that. It's just, that's the one they wait for. It's really a big, big song, and they know all the words and they know all the pubs, and then they come up and tell you that they've been to some of those pubs listed in the songs. It's really funny.
Yeah, and staying on the American side of things, there was a huge gig that you did for a very special American, which is Barack Obama, and of course joined with Enda Kenny. What was that gig like?
Well, that was just, I mean, it was insane. I mean, we were um, down in Offaly, you know, for when he came there, and it was just mental because it took us about an hour and a half to get through all the, you know, security, and we had to do about 3 different checkpoints before we got in to Moneygall, and we were kind of getting interviewed on the street, and we had sound checked, and it was just brilliant because we got to meet him there, and you know, he loved what we did, and the vibe was wonderful, and him and Michelle Obama were just incredible, and Enda was singing our praises, and it was really nice vibe. And we were still a young band at that point. We were still at about 2.5, 3 years in existence. But it was a wonderful time, very, very special. But then, of course, a few months later, the invitation came to go to the White House for St. Paddy's Day for his soiree there. So we were like, oh my God. And President Obama did a press interview with somebody, and he was asked about, it was in the lead up to St. Paddy's Day, and he was asked who his favorite Irish groups were. And he said he loved U2. And then he said, and I also love a group called the High Kings. And we were like, oh, shit,
Oh
you know,
my
this
God.
is crazy, absolutely crazy that he would say that. And so that, you know, everybody kind of started turning their heads towards the band. I mean, him saying that was a major thing for us in the States, because while we had a very, very decent following there, it multiplied tenfold at that point. And that day in the White House was just phenomenal. We were given such great treatment. He was so gracious. Both of them were so gracious to us again. We performed a lovely set for a lot of dignitaries that he had there. And it was just, we were just treated so well. And another lovely, lovely time just to be in the band. That was some of the perks that you get. You don't always get them, but when you do, you relish them and you treasure them, yeah.
And what's the security like getting into the White House? Because if it's bad,
oh my God, it is every bit. I mean, it's just, you know, if Moneygall was bad, this was insane completely. You know, we were briefed before we left the hotel. We were briefed before we got into the Jeep, bring us over there. We were, you know, checked before we even got inside the gates. You get inside the gates and you're checked before you get towards the house. I reckon there was about 5 or 6 metal detectors we had to go through before we got inside. But then when you're inside, you know, we were told you can walk around, you can take pictures, just don't touch anything, and chill out and relax and grab some food and grab a coffee or tea, whatever you need. And that was great, you know. And then like a few years later, we actually went back to DC again to do a private show for General Martin Dempsey, who had been President Obama's chief of staff, who was also a big fan of the band. We didn't even realize this.
Wow.
How we found that out was he was retiring in 2015, and he requested front row seats at a concert of ours in Virginia for his entire family. That's how we wanted to celebrate the day of his retirement. So our manager thought, let's look into this a little bit further. You know, this is General Martin Dempsey. Let's reach out to him and go, listen, we're going to be in the States to do a couple of things. Would you like us to come see you? And we'd be honored to do a private show. We thought nothing else would happen for this. But he reached back to us and he said, I'd love you to come, and you can have lunch with me at the Pentagon and do a private show. Yeah. And we were like, let's do it, you know. So that was September 2015. We got to the Pentagon, tons and tons of security. We had a private lunch with General Martin Dempsey and his wife and his family. Took us everywhere in through the Pentagon, into all the most important rooms, down into the basement where they keep all the files of everything that's ever happened in American history. And we were like, oh man, nobody would believe this. You know, it was just absolutely insane. But we thought we couldn't better the White House, but here we are in the Pentagon. Just incredible stuff, really. So again, though, you know, these are really things that we're very lucky to have done. And it's great. Sometimes, particularly in an Irish band playing Irish music, you know, the Irish have a good reputation around the world for being approachable, and the music gets us in the door so many different places. But we're very lucky and very blessed and grateful to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think it is like bands and groups like yourselves that make it possible for other Irish bands to, you know, to go and do it.
Yeah.
What's the kind of do's and don'ts when you're in close quarters with a president of the United States?
Just don't press the red button, basically. that was, because we did, the thing is, we went in the Pentagon with General Martin Dempsey. He showed us the phone, where all the red buttons for each country. And then there's a big red button. And he was like, whatever you do, don't press that one. And you're immediately, it's like that Dougal moment. That's when you actually do want to press it,
Yeah.
And, but no, it's just really, you just have to remember your P's and Q's and your manners. But honest to God, I had already done the White House on my own when I was doing the Moving Out gig. I had performed with the Marine Corps Band in 2004 at the Christmas tree lighting ceremony in Washington with President and Laura Bush. And I found them to be very approachable, very easygoing. I shared a microphone with President Bush. It's somewhere on YouTube, and he was singing Jingle Bells with me. We were duetting on Jingle Bells. And that went all over the press in America and actually made Sky News here in Ireland. And I thought, why the hell would that go around the world? But I mean, there you go. It was just me from Ireland singing with President Bush, and very good crack, very good fun. She was lovely. And President Obama and Michelle Obama were exactly the same. They were very easygoing, considering what his role is on the world and how important it is and how stressful it is. They were lovely, lovely people. And I just have to commend them for that.
Yeah, and I think seeing those things like on Sky News and the footage of you performing for Obama and Enda Kenny, it's a really nice thing that you can bond within other countries, like, really high-ranking leaders over something that isn't political. And I think that's why Ireland has been so welcome to those countries. And you guys have kept the doors open for, the next High Kings or...
Yeah, well, that's the thing, I mean, you, when you're put in that position, you're not just representing the band or yourself, you're representing your country and your culture, and you're representing your leader, who is probably going to be there with you as well. And a couple of times we were there, Enda was there, and so, you've got to show up, and you've got to, be professional, and you've got to be courteous, and we always thank America for giving us our big start as the High Kings in our career, because America's been really, really good to us, and to get opportunities like that, and to go to Arlington Cemetery and lay a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier, and these are things that we may never get to do again. We're blessed to even get to do it once in our lifetime, and so many bands and singers would probably, I remember an artist, I won't mention names, but a well-known artist over in the States who said, I will never get to do that, most likely. So he said, this is a serious, serious honor for you to do this. There is millions of Americans who will never see the inside of the White House. And, in saying that, it was really kind of, you're right. This really is something to be treasured and respected and grateful for. And
staying on the High Kings and the success you guys had with those first few albums, and even with Friends for Life, which I believe was co-produced, or there was a bit of help from Sharon Shannon.
Yeah, Sharon we brought in as the producer, and John Dunford, her manager, also was involved, and they had been working years previously on a couple of the Waterboys albums, and we were fans of the Waterboys. And I've written with Mike Scott from the Waterboys, so there was a bit of a connection there, and we brought them in because we were wanting to do something different, and we had a bunch of songs that had been picked for the album that we were playing one day, and during one of the breaks in one of the first days of recording in Galway, which at Sharon's studio, I just happened to start playing one of my original songs called "Oh Maggie," and Sharon came running to me going, "What's that? What's that?" And I told her, and she said, "I've got a riff for that already. Let's just jam that out." So within about a half an hour, we were recording "Oh Maggie." Everything else was swiped aside, and the whole concept of the album changed to an 80% original album, which was brilliant for us, And the vibe was terrific. They did a great job, and I think "Oh Maggie" was released in Germany, and I think it went top 10 in Germany, which was incredible for us, And
that album really worked. It really did.
It really did. It really
even
did.
Billboard,
And
top 3.
It did really, really well for us, thankfully, and it kind of established us as a band who could bring out originals into a genre, whereas bands predominantly sing the standards and the old ballads and everything. So it gave us a chance to say, look, we're able to write these songs as well, and we won't, bombard you with them, but we'll have one or two here in the show. And it was really, really great, because as I said, Oh Maggie is still in the show all over the world, and people chant it when we sing it, and it's great. Really, really cool.
And when you're touring, I'm going to say the world, and you have done 10 times over.
Yeah.
I suppose, what does it feel like now to not be able to do that?
Oh, it's like having your hands tied. I swear to God, it's like artistic entrapment, really. I mean, there's nothing we can do. The whole world has stopped, as we know. Our industry stopped before anything else did, really, because obviously we can't play live. We were in the midst of a 40-date American tour. We did exactly 20 dates, and we had no choice but to come back. Personally, I was hearing you won't play again. This was March. I was hearing you won't play again till September, and I was going, no, that'll never happen. That this, we'll be back by the summer, late summer at the latest.
Yeah.
And it's just soul destroying, because we had such a big year in front of us, and I'm sure lots of other bands did as well. But we had so many plans. We had so many territories to tour in, so many new places to tour in, like Japan and Australia, and so everything's been put back until next year. The way things are right now, will they happen next year? I don't know. I really hope so. All depends on vaccines and miracle cures or whatever, or people doing what they're told, and getting the world back to some semblance of normality. But I think that the sad thing about it is there are so many great artists and bands and performers and comedians and crew people. Crew people are the ones that are really going to suffer here, and lighting techs and sound guys who will have to do something else. It's a very, very sorry and sad state of affairs. But I really, every morning I wake up and the first thing I say to myself is, right, today is going to be the breakthrough. Today is when we're going to start getting things back to normal. And I think you have to have some of that belief in your system every morning, you know what I mean? Or every day, just to kind of face it, you know what I mean? And because people have been saying, oh, you're going to have to retrain, you're going to have to do something else. And that's very scary, because I've given 30 odd years of my life to this career, and I've invested not only hundreds of thousands of hours, but hundreds of thousands of pounds and euros and dollars into getting to this point. So I'm not going to be willing to give it up at any point soon, so onwards and upwards, and hopefully one of these days soon, we'll find that breakthrough.
That's it. And that positive mental kind of attitude is really important at the moment.
Yeah.
Was there times when you toured, especially for like long stints, where you found it hard to keep that kind of positive mental attitude, or that, like, being so far from home for so long?
Yeah. And there's been a few times, you know what I mean? Because I had, at one point I had 3 kids under the age of 5, now they're 15, 13 and 12, but I miss them terribly. I love being a dad. I love being at home doing the normal, regular stuff like the school runs and everything. And I remember there was one point I was away for 3 or 4 months, and it was absolutely so emotionally sort of hard and difficult to be away on the road for that time. And this was before like FaceTime and all of that. So, you wouldn't be able to see them, and you wouldn't be able to speak to them because they weren't able to speak at that point, So you'd be getting little goos and gas and everything and trying to make the most out of that. But those were the times you'd be on the road for ages and you wouldn't see them or nothing like that. I mean, the last few years, it's been a little bit less hard because you can have the FaceTime, you can have them texting and all that. But I think anybody who's a family person, while you do love your job on the road and everything and playing concerts and all of that, you do miss your family, you do miss your loved ones at home. But, honestly, we do have the best job in the world, because getting out there and getting that vibe and that reaction from people all over the place is just second to none, And like I was saying in the previous question there, I can't wait for the day that we can do that again.
Yeah, neither can I. It's it really is dragging on, but hopefully it's for the better. It's for the greater cause,
I hope so, man.
Taking it back to, I'm going to jump back 10 years.
Sure.
To 2010, I believe. You climbed Kilimanjaro for Our Lady's Hospital, Children's Hospital in Crumlin. Yeah. What was that experience like?
Whew, that was, what, first of all, I actually forgot it was the 10th anniversary. It was a friend of mine recently messaged me to say, geez, it was 10 years ago since you did that. And I thought, geez, it couldn't be, But it was very daunting at the start. I did say yes immediately because anything to do with Crumlin Children's Hospital is anything you can do to help, you do. I've been in there, I've seen it, I've gotten choked up and walked out of there in tears when you meet some of the kids. And when you have kids of your own, that's second nature. It becomes, an immediate yes when you're asked to do something. But the training was intense. I worked with Paul Byrne in Body Burn Gym in the city centre. A really, really great friend of mine and a lovely, lovely guy. And a great motivator, physically and mentally, a great motivator. And so Paul trained the hell out of me and everybody else who was involved. We had Sheila Shoig, Catherine Thomas, various different people, Carl Spain, Alan Short, comedians. And it was incredible. We bonded very quickly, all of us. And we knew that we were in this for a common goal. When we started the climb in Africa, we immediately knew that this was going to be way more difficult than what we thought it was going to be. A lot of people were, getting really bad headaches and nosebleeds because of the altitude. I think the first 3 days were okay for me. I was physically up for it. The 4th and 5th were really tough. And then the final climb on the 6th, which you had to get out of bed in freezing cold temperatures at 3 a.m., was the worst. I woke up with the worst headache I've ever had in my entire life. I just didn't even want to get out of my sleeping bag. And again, Paul and myself sort of managed to push each other that morning. And we got to see the sunrise on the halfway up Kilimanjaro to the very, top.
Yeah.
And to base camp. And it was just incredible to do that. It was kind of one of these moments where you go, geez, this is another moment I'll never see again. Relish it and make the most of it. We were physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted by the time we got there. We had no control whatsoever over our feelings. And people were crying, and we didn't even know why we were crying. We just got to the top. And it was so emotional. And you can see in some of the footage, I think there was a lovely documentary, I think it's on YouTube, that was done by RTE. And Colin Farrell actually was the narrator on that. But it was just one of those moments where you were just like, shit, this is incredible. We have climbed Kilimanjaro, and we did it for a really, really great cause. And it was a huge achievement, a huge achievement. And then coming down was almost as hard. You had to ski down in like on gravel the whole way down. You had your 2 walking sticks, and that was the only way you could get down. You couldn't walk down. So by the time we got down, we were just toast, basically. We hadn't seen a shower for like about a week at that point, so everybody was fighting over showers. It was funny, but a brilliant time, a lovely time. Would I do it again? I don't know. I was asked to do Everest the following year, and I think we were on tour. I wasn't sure. I was sort of on the fence about that because I had done Machu Picchu in Peru the year before with Keith Duffy and Mikey Graham from Boyzone and a few others from there, and Paul again. So I had done 2 in a row. And I just wasn't sure if Everest was
the one to do next. Yeah.
The one to do next, and maybe who knows? I'd have to be very, very physically fit to do it again and mentally fit to do it again.
Yeah, and after that week and a bit of kind of grueling climbing / skiing, when you got to the bottom, was there a bit of a celebration, or was everyone just wrecked?
We were wrecked, but we did manage to have a celebration. The organisers of everything over there took us to dinner that night. Everybody, it was the first time we'd seen each other clean and dressed up and everything. And we had a few drinks and a bit of a boogie and a celebration. But it was just great because the sense of achievement amongst the bunch in the group and everything was just incredible. You really felt proud and calling home to say that you had done it. And because there was times during that particular week where you really kind of it plays with your mind, altitude like that, and you were starting to have the doubts and you were starting to have the moments where you're like, the hell am I doing here? But then you have to just think and be reminded of why you were there, the kids in the hospital beds, you know, who were going to be in there for a long time, the parents who would never get the chance to do this. And speaking to parents who were with me that had kids that were sick, that's when you just get off your arse and you just say, right, I'm doing this. Do it. That's it, yeah.
And 2 years after that, then you had a slight obstacle in your career with you kind of were combating a vocal fold nodule. Was that frightening?
It was. It was frightening because I'd heard the horror stories from other people. about, vocal nodules and everything. And I had never had that. And I remember we were touring non-stop. We had an album out. I think it might have been the Friends for Life album. And we had toured that non-stop. We were all over Europe. And I remember distinctly, I got the University Concert Hall in Limerick for a gig. It was December. I think it was December. No, sorry, it was April. 2013, I think it was. And I had nothing. I had absolutely nothing. I thought I just had a cold or something. But 3 days after that gig, I still had nothing going on. I'm like, this was a bit interesting. So I phoned our manager, Dave, and I said, Dave, I might need to go and see a specialist. Can we hook it up? So I went into town, into Dublin, and sure enough, all the cameras were put down, and he was like, yeah, you've got nodule there. So be very reluctant to remove it. He says, so we're going to have to get you to retrain and, learn how to sing and learn how to breathe. So I did that. And while I still feel it from time to time, I think I've managed to control it. And I know when it's coming on. So I sort of get all my techniques going again and sort of avoid it. And a lot of it's to do with air and how you breathe while you're performing and singing. So hopefully one of the positives I take from this year is that the long break I've had from performing and singing might do that a world of good this year, because a good long break might, heal that completely. But I think when you don't get rid of your nodules, they're there forever, but you just have to learn to live with them. And that's what I've done. I would have just been a little bit too apprehensive and scared to have them nipped out just in case, because that happened to Julie Andrews, The Sound of Music. She never sang again after she had hers removed, and that was her calling card, was her beautiful voice, but she can't sing now.
Oh God, okay, so the fear was really there.
The fear is there, yeah. So I had to get a lot of advice from various singers that I know, and everybody said just try to learn to live with it.
Well, thank God you did learn to live with it, and live with it well. The last 8 years have been really successful for the High Kings and yourself. And,
thank you.
When lockdown ends, what can we expect from the High Kings? So everyone is sorted and vaccinated, and there's no such thing as a coronavirus. What's going to happen with the High Kings?
Well, we're going to get out there. As I said, we've got everything on hold, just like everybody else has. We've got everything on hold. I mean, we've got so many dates and concerts on hold right now that my wife and kids probably, from having me here 24/7, they probably won't see me at all for months on end. But I think we've already had that chance to discuss that, and everybody's okay with it. But I just think that we'll tour and tour and tour. We've got the World Tour album is coming out in February, as we were talking about earlier on. And we have another project that we're talking about right now. So we've got our plans made, and all going well and all going according to plan, post-COVID, post-vaccine and all that. I think we'll be in a pretty good state, hopefully. And hopefully our fans will be there waiting for us to welcome us back, because we can't wait to get out there and do it all over again. But I think it's been good to regroup and to take a break, because we had been touring constantly nonstop for years. So I hope everybody is refreshed and mentally, physically ready to go all over again. Yeah,
and I'm looking forward to February for when the World Tour from Dublin comes out. And thanks so much for chatting to me, Darren. It's been an absolute pleasure. Really interesting stories. I'm excited to sit down and dissect this now and just watch it back.
Well, thanks a million, because, funnily enough, I haven't talked about some of the stuff you brought up in years, and you forget some of the finer details of these things. So it's been a nice little refresher course for me. So I really appreciate it. And it's been one of the better chats I've had on Zoom over the lockdown. So Michael, thanks a million for having me on, and I wish you the best of luck going forward and everything.
Thank you very much, Darren. And a huge thank you to Brian Whitehead as well, who set this up.
The man.
The main Whitehead. Man. Exactly.
Absolutely.
The boss.
Yeah.
If you want to get Darren on Instagram, it's at Darren Holden 72. Make sure you follow the High Kings official as well, and back.chat podcast. But until next week, thank you very much for listening on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And see you next Friday. Thanks.